Hello Magic players, welcome everybody. Here we are for a what hopefully will be a quick and worthwhile deck building video. Not specifically just for like one kind of deck, but more of a in general sort of thing. So hopefully you guys will have a little bit more understanding and additional ways to look at other types of decks regardless of colors that it is that you're going to want to build. So I've certainly built plenty of different decks myself already, as we can see, with numerous different color combinations and things in here. And there is a straw poll that was down in the, or I'll put the link down in the description, as far as what is it that you guys would like to see most, and the one that ended up getting the highest votes for a color combination that we'll be spending today was a red-black deck, is what you guys wanted to see most. So let's create a new one right off the top. We'll use our deck builder with it, and there's a handful of themes and sort of concepts and other strategies and such that we wanted to look at with today. First and foremost, the most important thing with Magic is that you want to use good cards. So let's take a look at a couple of examples of what I mean. Like, how do you know if one card is really better than another? There's all sorts of different things here. Let's just click on that guy. Let's click on that guy. Let's click on him. Let's go skip colors, try and find something else over here, something else over there. Get a couple of different guys in a couple of different colors here. Where's the one? There we go. Let's get him. Let's get this guy. And then what? We think we have one more color? Yeah, one more color over here. Let's pick him. Let's pick him. And where was that last example? Shoot, that last example that I was thinking of. There we go. This guy. So, how do you really have an idea as far as what cards are better than others? Can I rifle through this? No, I can't. I have to scroll away side by side. So one thing you really want to look for when looking at certain cards is what kind of value are you getting based off the cost. Every one of these costs something. It's not just the 2 mana that the card itself has, it needs a white and a colorless source, blah blah blah. It's not just that. Each card also has a cost of just being 1/60th of your deck. Just simply being there has a cost. A 0 cost card still takes up some sort of resource, and you want to figure out which ones are better than others and what's a good way to really go about it. So we can look at guys like Timberpack Wolf, 2 for a 2/2. All of these I wanted to pick 2 for a 1/1 sort of, but he makes something else. He could be a 2/2 on his own. Troll, 2 for a 2/2. Majoring Bully, 2 for a 2/2. I purposely wanted to grab a bunch of different 2-drops so we can kind of look at a difference between them. They all tend to pretty much do something else. 2 for a 2/2, but it gives you some life and maybe some more life if you have extras of them. Shambling Ghoul, 2 for a 2/3. Okay, so he's a little bit tougher, which is nice, but you can't use him the first turn, so that's a little bit of a downside with it. Child of Night, 2 for a 2/1, so he's a little bit weaker, but he's got a cool little ability. Majoring Bully, 2 for a 2/2, and there's 2 other abilities. One of them is potentially a downside, but he does have an upside to go along with it. You look at guys like Goblin Piker, who's 2 for a 2/1. Okay, so something good about him, right? Well, he's a goblin. That's his ability. So you can tell right off the bat, just by looking at some of these, that Goblin Piker sucks. He is awful. His quote-unquote ability is being a goblin, but he's terrible in comparison to when you look at guys like Undercity Troll. Again, 2 for a 2/2, but he's got 2 abilities. They're both really good, and there's no downside like how Child of Night has the 1 extra toughness or 1 less toughness, or this guy comes into play tapped. There's no downside with him. He's just straight good. The vanilla 2 for a 2/2 Grizzly Bear, this guy at least has some sort of additional benefit should you run a bunch of them, but he's still not very good because it's really conditional. It's not exactly that powerful, whereas both of those are powerful. You don't need other cards. He's just straight good. And we can compare all of those to creatures like Topin Freeblade, who are 2 for a 2/2 with 2 really good abilities that work on its own. And then you have guys that 2 for a 2/2 is a little bit more difficult to cast because they're both colored, but he's got 3 abilities, not to mention one of them helps benefit the rest of your army. That's insane. It's much, much, much better. It is worlds better than creatures like Goblin Piker or potentially Shambling Ghoul. They have different kind of things of what makes all of the cards unique. Not every card is good. Not every card is going to be good in every deck, even if it is a good card. Undercity Troll is unequivocally a great card, but very few people use him because he just doesn't seem to fit in most decks, but that doesn't make him bad. So you want to try and find something that does what you need it to do for you, that's good on its own, that's good with the rest of your deck, and it's good with what you want to do as far as what your goal is. Every Magic deck needs a goal. When you build a deck, you generally think about it as far as, I like this combination of cards, let me use this combo, and what else can I go around it with? That's a very common way of thinking of things. You know, people who see Shadows of the Past and like, well, this is cool. During the whole game, it helps me go through my deck to make sure I'm playing better, and then at the end of the game, I can win the game just by this itself, even if there's nothing going on and it's a complete stalemate. That's a really good card. I want to run a deck based on this. And then you can kind of decide, well, what else do you want to do? Well, you're going to need ways to, you know, have creatures go into the graveyard. So you want to not use cards like Vine Breeder, which will take them out of your graveyard. And you just want to find ways that you wouldn't want to use Despoiler of Souls with Shadows of the Past, things like that. You want to find ways of putting things in graveyards. You know, Bone Splinters helps secure that you get one guy in there as well as a removal spell. Things that you can use to benefit your other guys in that sense. And once you have an idea as far as what your goal sort of is, you want to build around it, and then there's a couple mindsets you can go from there. You can think, I am going to hammer this down their throat as hard as I can, you know, A, B, and C, we're just going to go for this and nothing else, and then you end up with something with a type of deck called Red Deck Wins when you're going with that sort of mindset. You can take a more balanced approach and thinking, well, if I don't get my Shadows of the Past and I don't have 4 creatures in the graveyard, how am I going to win the game? You have to have other ways of doing that, and that might be something as simple as, I'm going to remove their creatures with Reeve Soul, I'm going to have a Planeswalker out here who, if they don't respond to, she wins the game by herself, and then I'll just have some big fat creatures that can win the game over time, like a Nightfire Giant or a Kothafed, and they'll just take care of business by themselves. And, you know, just to make them a little bit more reliable, I can do things like bring them back from the graveyard with a Necromantic Summons, or I can bring them back from the graveyard with the Gravedigger, and that just makes all your cards a little bit more reliable. Just ways for your deck to work together to help reach you toward that common path A of victory, path B of victory. You know, you want to have multiple ways to win a game. And, how does that help us for us? How does that help us for us? How does that help us today? You guys wanted to see a red-black deck, so let's just quickly take a look at some of the black cards that we have. Red and black are both very popular for their removal. They have lots of ways of getting rid of opposing creatures, and that's good for multiple reasons. It helps, 1, you get through, and 2, can potentially stop their path of victory. You know, if their path of victory is going to be gain a bunch of life, or I don't know, who's a single creature here who can win the game on its own? You know, Nantuko Husk, if that's going to be their path of victory, but you're killing all their other creatures, you know, he sacrifices them and gets a temporary boost, but you may or may not necessarily care about that. Or if you kill the Husk, all of his other creatures might not be as beneficial. You know, the Connoisseur is more permanent, so it doesn't quite go around it as much, but, you know, it's ways to deal with that. So black is really good with removal. They often have downsides to them as well. There's often a lot of black suicide is what they call it. You know, you'll draw cards and lose life, as we see with Read the Bones over here. You know, you're getting some sort of benefit and it's strong, but you're paying a price for it too. Black is very common for those. You get a decent creature out here, but you have to lose your worst creature and the payment for it. Black likes those sorts of things. That's what it's good at. And you know, even when there is really powerful abilities, you know, they kill you, they lose a permanent, you draw a card, which is insane. You can also still lose the game with it. So even, you know, your strongest of creatures, your stuff is going to have downsides. Red is more about, you know, having speed and having lots of removal itself. I'm going to burn your guys. I'm going to make sure that there's nothing you can do about it. I'll have burns on a stick, as I like to say. And I'll penalize you if you don't want to respond to my weak creatures because you're busy occupying yourself with stuff later on. You know, more options to burn, you know, ways to get through. So red is very good with removal and with aggro, as they say. If you want to play a quick game where you just try and get through them quick, you know, think of Face Hunter and Hearthstone. Red is very good at that. And when combined with black, you know, two very removal heavy colors, there's a lot of stuff you can do with that. You can go very removal heavy, just get rid of all their creatures, and if they have nothing on the field, they can't beat you. Unless it's a mill deck, which exists, but they're more rare. And if it's a control deck and you've got cards that aren't based on damage and are just strict remove, like some of the higher black ones, they'll play fewer creatures and you have fewer removals, but you'll still trade them off one for one and go from there. You can get there with very small threats as long as you've answered to their ways of dealing with you, and you just have one more card than they can do something about. Another, yeah, there you go. 4 for a 3/2, but he's got 2 abilities, so he's pretty freaking cool, and they work in tandem as well. So just going back to cards that are good cards. So that brings us to you know, what kind of deck do we want to build? We could look at something as strict as just remove everything. Let me use the arrows. Strict as just remove everything and see what we get from there. So we can throw in a couple of these, and what's more removal? Here's a bunch of removal. We'll throw in a Planeswalker just because. Throw in one of him just because. Double Languish, best card in the set, so we'll put that in there. You know, what's more removal? There's removal. He's recurring removal. Here's some instant speed removal. Here's some instant speed removal. Instant speed removal. So we can throw all of this crap in there. And then we can go other ways. With Molten Vortex, we can have recurring removal if we want. We can have more instant speed removal if we want. And Ravaging Blaze can be some late game removal. All sorts of things. Inferno Fist can actually act as a removal itself. You know, Twin Bolt is a very strong, very flexible removal spell. Let's throw a couple more burn spells in there. And then at this point, you're just going kill, 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 kill. You're killing all of their stuff. Chandra's Ignition is a fantastic board wipe. But at the same time, you're going to need things to do as well. We're already halfway through the deck, and we don't really have a lot in here. We got 5 creatures, and we have cards that just kill their creatures. Well, what if they don't have creatures? Or what if they counter it? Or what if they have... Where is he? Where is this douche? What if they have this guy, Hexproof? You can't remove him unless it's a board wipe like Languish, as long as they haven't pumped him up and made him a little bit stronger. Or if they have guys like Gaea's Revenge, who you can't counter to remove. Or, you know, creatures that are just so much larger than yours that your burn spells of dealing 2 or 3 damage just can't quite get there to kill him. You know, there's other ways around that, obviously, but you know, it's one way to think about if you wanted to go. Let's get these green cards out of here. One way to go to think if you just want to remove as many things as you possibly can. It's a strategy, but you have to wonder, you know, how else am I going to win this game? Am I going to win with Shadows of the Past? Well, not if I don't have any creatures in this deck. I'm not going to. You know, can I win with 1 or 2 big creatures of my own? You certainly could. You know, if we're going to have an Embermaw Hellion in here who can guarantee that he gets his damage through in some way, shape, or form, and he happens to survive Languish if he is in fact on the board, so maybe he can win on his own. Maybe you can get there. I need to start scrolling the more efficient way. You know, maybe you can get there with a single Kothafet. He is definitely capable of doing that. So you figure if I run a couple of these with an Ignition and, you know, some Languishes, stuff like that, Nightfire Giant can get there over time as long as he's not killed. You know, that 3rd toughness puts him out of some burn. 4 power puts him out of Reeve Soul range. You know, he is a zombie, so he's unable to be killed with Cruel Revival if black decks want to try and use this for additional card advantage. Though obviously he won't survive, you know, Flesh to Dust or Unholy Hunger, mind you, which there's almost no reason to use Flesh to Dust when you have Unholy Hunger. Regeneration is extremely rare. So you gotta keep that in mind as well. You gotta have multiple ways to win the game, but you want to have things that you can respond with their cards as well. So let's just clear all of these out. Oh crap! Well, actually, I should have kept those all in there. Yeah, let's put a couple of those cards back now that I've eliminated everything from here. Let's put. Where did he go? You. Let's put you back in there. Where did those Kothafeds go? Get over here. Put those in there. We had 1 of each of those. Okay, so that's where we were sitting. Let's throw 1 of him back in. 1 of him. Another thing you want to think of is how many of each colors of your cards do you have? How much do each of these things cost? You know, aggro decks will be more in the 1, 2, and 3 range, and so they can afford to, you know, play cheaper stuff, and you can adjust other cards that you want to put in based on how much it costs. If you have stuff that's more 4, 5, and 6, you're still going to need some 1, 2, and 3s to play in order that you can survive long enough to get there to your 4, 5, and 6. If you have nothing but 5 drops, you'll be great at turn 5, I guess. I mean, you'll only be able to play 1 card a turn, and they'll have had 4 turns of playing things to go around you. And then at that point, you know, they've stocked up all their removal that they haven't used yet. You know, there's lots of things that you want to think about. The game is often about balance, unless your path to victory is so strong and so fast that it just doesn't care. You generally just want to try and be balanced. So let's start going with a couple of strategies from here on. We'll actually get to the meat and less concepts by clearing all these cards out here first. And let's see what do we have available to us. You want to either have an idea in mind, like I really want to use Kothafed, how can I go around using him? I really want to use Molten Vortex, what can I do for a deck based around this to win? Or sometimes you're just kind of looking like, well, I like black and red, I think it's cool that they have lots of removal, what can I really do with it? You want to familiarize yourself with what cards you have available first. So red is good obviously with removal and speed, and black is obviously good with removal, but then they have some other stuff. They have ways of utilizing the graveyard. They have ways of, you know, using it to pump themselves up, or you can have guys deal extra damage based on more things in the graveyard, which is very cool. Or you can have creatures sacrifice other things to get stronger and therefore, you know, become larger threats than they otherwise would be. You can use your graveyard in this sense as well and get some recurring card advantage and keep using the same cards again and again and again, which is very beneficial as well. So there's a few different ways we can really go about this. We can do something more control-y, where we just want to put in some removal and some nice early game defense to bring it over there. Let's pop 1 Shadows of the Past. A couple, let's not throw Bone Splinters in yet. Let's put in, what else we want to see here? A couple of Languish. Let's get a couple of Grave Diggers. Let's go, just for variety, we'll just throw one of each of these guys all in here at the moment. It doesn't really matter which ones are in here right now. And a couple of Kothafeds. So now you're looking, you know, just with some basic black, you're looking at, okay, it's a little bit heavier, so I need a little bit more in the middle aspects of here. I've got some removal, I've got some nice defense here. People won't want to come in and attack because he'll kill anything that he wants. You know, I've got a couple of board wipes so I can respond. If they have lots of early stuff, I can just drop 1 Languish. And then you've got some late game threats that can win the game for you by themselves as well. So, you know, how do we want to support something like that? Well, you know, we're a little weak early, so we can get some more removal early on, bring some of those in. If we're going to be more of a late game deck, then we can use, where did they go? Here we go. Then we can use something that benefits more from being played later on in the game than earlier in the game, so we can go with a couple of those. You know, Planeswalkers are always good. We got some bigger damage direct that has ways to go around blue decks as well. It can't be countered. We still need a couple extra things. Well, we can use Flame Shadow Conjuring. If we're only going to have a couple of creatures, let's get the most bang for their buck. You know, they'll combo perfectly. Yeah, talk about synergy. Priest of the Bloodright, when he comes into play, you get a 5/5 flying token. Well, when this comes, you can just tap 1 red mana and you double him. So you double this guy, that'll double the tokens. You'll get 2 of them. And then only this guy is going to die at the end of turn because he is the card that you're copying. The token is just part of his ability of what he does. So, you know, talk about synergy and having your cards work together. You want to find ways where they'll interact, you know, very strong. 5/5 token also happens to survive Languish, which is really good. Speaking of surviving Languish, let's throw a Hellion in there. A couple of Chandra's Ignitions. So now we're looking at, we've got a handful of high cost, high power stuff, you know, a couple of Kothafeds. Ignition can win the game and clear their board on one of your larger creatures. You know, you've got a couple of guys that survive your own Languish that we're looking at. You know, Languish can help kill their board. You can always get some of your creatures back as well if they have died, and then further copy them. And you got plenty of burn for some early game removal as well. We're looking at a nice, good black-red control right here. And, you know, we're sitting only at half the deck. So there's still a lot of cards that we have left to figure out. But the most important part of every deck, regardless of what it is that you're doing, is your mana base. You can't win the game unless you're a very, very, very interesting and intricate very specific kind of legacy or vintage deck. Buzzwords for old cards. If you want to use 1 or 2 land in some specific builds, you need land. You need lots of it. You need enough of it that you can play everything you want, but not too much where that's all that you have. So you want to find a couple different options. Since we're using 2 colors, we'll automatically put those guys in. I think 1 Rogue's Passage needs to go in every deck unless you just straight up have no creatures. But every deck should have at least a few, because you know there will be some that have good abilities. You know, it doesn't hurt to throw in a couple Foundry of the Councils again that can potentially get there on its own. And some Evolving Wilds to help make sure that you're getting the colors that you want, and they help thin the deck, as it says. You know, when you use this, you get another land out of your library. It allows you to shuffle the deck in case you did something with Scry and you know what's on top, or if they put some cards back on top of your library, you can shuffle that up. But it's more about just taking the land out of your deck so you don't draw it as much. You still have it, you've got all the land you need, but you're not drawing it as much, which can just make your deck more consistent. So let's throw in, let's just put 8 mountains in for now. Let's put 8 swamps in for now. Just a very base average way to go. We're looking at it, and this symbol down here shows that we've got 23 land. 23 is, it's a little low. It's good for, you know, quicker or more mid-range decks. If you're heavy in like the 2, 3, and some 4s, you know, 23 land could be perfectly fine. We go a little bit higher up. We're pretty much a flat plateau of mana curve, so we're going to want to play a land every single turn. Otherwise, we're never going to get to our bigger stuff, and we can't really afford to waste a turn. So there's actually tables and stats out there. I'll try and take a link of a couple and paste them in the description. Just somebody doing the math of statistics of if you have this much land in your deck, you know, by this turn, your chance of having this many land is this percent. You know, by turn 4, your chance of having 4 land is going to be 68% or something like that, based on how much land you have in your deck. And I'll paste a couple of those in because we want to think about it. And with a deck like this, we pretty much want to guarantee that by turn 5, we have 5 land out. And, you know, if it takes us an extra turn, if we miss 1 drop to get to 6, probably not a huge deal. But we've got a lot of big stuff at 5 that's really important to us. We absolutely need Languish on turn 4. So we would want to have enough land for that. We're a little bit of a slower deck. We're probably going to want to run a couple of extra land, which we could do either with running, let's see here, a couple more dual lands if we wanted to go with some Guild Gates. I personally hate the Guild Gates. I hate my lands coming into play tapped. If you really need that Languish and you draw this as your next land, you can't do it, and it really sucks. I'd rather use basics than that. They do have some merit, obviously, especially if you don't have any 1 or 2 drops, then it's much more likely that they can succeed. I'm going to personally stay away from them myself. I'll throw 1 in just for the pretty colors, I guess, in this particular deck. But then we're going to look at, where do those basic lands go? Here they are. Right now we're pretty split between 18 black cards and 14 red cards. So let's add 1 additional swamp in that to put us up to 25 land. You know, standard is about 24, about 40% of the deck is where you're really looking. So I'll go 1 land higher than that for now. Maybe I'll add another one since these 2 Evolving Wilds don't really produce mana. But we'll see with the curve how we want to do that. We may just want to add an extra one as well. But we'll just, you know what, we'll just throw that 26 land in there right for now. But it's not just I've got 18 black cards and 14 red cards. You also want to think of how much they cost to cast. This guy obviously requires 2 black. You know, Ignition is 2 red. This is just 1, but that's double, 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 double. There's lots of double black sources in here. All of our big stuff requires double black, and there's even a couple of our big red cards require double red. Only once we get down lower are we looking at single, single. Well, here's some early double red, so that kind of sways the balance back to being 50-50. And some more early double red, but there's no early double black. So you could argue that, well, I don't really need to worry about having the second black source until later. So maybe you could go without and cut 1 black land before you want to cut 1 red one, because you would want to be able to play your earlier red stuff that requires the double red, you know, when you actually can. It doesn't matter if you've got 1 red land and 2 black land if you can't play Exquisite Firecraft. Now, at least in the benefit of this particular deck, Ravaging Blaze is a little bit of a later game card. Chandra you definitely would want to play. Exquisite Firecraft, you usually use more mid-game. You're not going to kill a small creature with that. So it looks like early game, there's not really a critical need for getting either one. If we take a look at, let's see here, is there any double green? I can't think of any double green, at least not early. If we add white on here really quick, one good example. One good example is that we can look and we see, okay, he's double white at 2. He's also double white at 2. So if a deck is using both of these cards and a bunch of other stuff in other colors, you're going to need to go heavier in your white. Even if you don't use that many white cards, because they're double colored, you're going to need more of that earlier on. So you kind of have to think about, how much land do I need overall based on my curve? How much land do I need overall based on my colors, which gets trickier and trickier if you start using 3 or even 4 colors. And then it's not just how much do I need to be fair, because you would want to have more black sources than more red based on, you know, my more important cards are black and I have more black cards. But if I needed, you know, if all my 1, 2, and 3 drops, if they were all red, I would need more red mana to make sure that I can do those things earlier on. So there's lots of things to work with. But the main benefit, and I guess the most important point of the whole video, is that you don't have to make a deck perfect on the first go. That's what playtesting is all about. You know, the vast majority of decks that you make, sometimes they're just not going to be good. Sometimes they just need a couple little tweaks. And sometimes it's things where you have to get rid of good cards because they don't work against what your opponents are doing. Or that it's a good card, but you keep losing to a certain thing, and this card doesn't help you against that thing. So if you take it out for something else, you'll start winning more games because you're covering more of your weaknesses as well. So there's, you know, playtesting is the most important thing you can do. You know, don't be afraid of changing your deck around. You don't want to change it after every loss, mind you, or every win for that matter. You know, you want to play 5 to 10 games before you look at, okay, what cards worked, what cards didn't work, because you have to be able to draw all of the cards in a variety of situations to really see, this card just didn't work for me. It didn't do what I want it to do. And that's a sign when it's something you just need to get rid of. If every time you draw Gilt Leaf Winnower, you just don't really like it, it never seems to get anywhere for you, you have so much other removal that he never kills anything anyway, you could potentially get rid of it and put in a different 5-cost creature who can combo better with Flame Shadow and also survive Languish, unlike Gilt Leaf. You know, so just maybe for you that seems to work out better. Maybe you want more Embermaw Hellions because you seem to have an uncanny ability of drawing Chandra all the freaking time. And, you know, then you can just tap with Chandra, cast the Hellion, untap it, tap with Chandra again, and all of a sudden she flips. You know, if that's something that's more important to you, you can run a second one of him. He also survives Languish. So it depends on what other people are playing against you, what you find working, what you find not working, and kind of going from there. So this is just one concept of what to do with black-red. You know, we've got some late game finishers, we've got lots of removal, we got some bigger cards. We got a few things to do early, you know, mostly just removal. A lone Shadow of the Past is probably not that beneficial. I only have 11 creatures in here. Shadows of the Past, we're never really going to get to be able to use this feature of it, and we don't have enough to really even scry for. So it can probably go away in this deck, although it's a creature, not just your creature. So if we're killing all of their stuff, that can still help us scry through our own things, which can definitely still be beneficial. So, you know, we're still looking at, we have an option of adding in 2 additional cards. Where are we weakest on our curve? We've got some possibility of adding some additional 3-drops. You know, what do control decks like? Control decks like to draw cards, so we could add in a couple Read the Bones, and that way if we've gone through a lot of our early game removal and we need some more, well, you know, this will help us draw into a little bit of extra removal. If we want to have more red stuff for Chandra, we could maybe get rid of the Read the Bones, or find other things to do. Maybe we realize we get too much land too often and we don't need 26. Maybe we can get rid of, you know, 1 land, and maybe the Shadows of the Past isn't working for us. We can put in a couple extra burn spells and throw some Twin Bolts if we're getting killed too quick. You know, and Graveblade's not consistent enough to get out there. So we're looking at, we do have, well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we're looking at 12 early game direct removal spells. We've got a couple board wipes, another late game removal, and another late game removal with that as well, and again another board wipe. So there's plenty of removal in there. If we're looking at having 10 to 12, 10 to 15 removal cards, not counting the board wipes, you know, creature heavy decks will be running 20 to 30 creatures most of the time. So we're looking at, you know, we're getting a 1-for-1 deal here, and we've got the board wipes in there to go along with it. So we're probably perfectly fine on removal in that case. We're at 60 cards right now, so we really could just sit there. We've got a decent curve, we've got plenty of land to accommodate for it. We have our paths to victory. Chandra can be a path to victory on her own. She's a little slower, but she can be. Graveblade, not as much. You need more creatures for him to be a path to victory on his own. People aren't going to want to block him. But he definitely can get there for, you know, slow damage overall. He combos perfectly with Chandra's Ignition as well for the Death Touch, as well as Ignition working with Chandra herself. So that combos very well. Kothafet is absolutely possible of getting there by himself. A 6/6 flyer in any format is a very strong and threatening creature that you want to deal with. And with as many things that you're going to be removing, you're going to be continually drawing that many cards. You don't want to take too much damage early on, though, because you can potentially kill yourself off of him. So having a couple of ways to gain some life would be nice. We could with Shadows of the Past. We're probably not going to get there, though. So maybe we will want to run an extra Unholy Hunger instead of a different removal spell somewhere else. So that way we can just gain a couple extra life just to be safe. That's part of playtesting, part of figuring things out, and you know, what we want to do. Maybe we want to add a Liliana just because she's a lifelink creature, and maybe she can become more beneficial for us. You know, maybe we want to add a Child of Night and then have Chandra's Ignition go off of him and gain a bunch of life. Maybe we want to do that just to give us a little bit of something else to recover ourselves a little bit with. Just some options, just some things to think about. Are there any other life gain cards in black? I think there is. Is this lifelink? No, it's not. It's flying. Okay. No other lifelink enchantments in black. So that's really all you can do to try and stave that off and hope that Kothafet doesn't kill you. But I mean, if you're getting that many where Kothafet is killing you, chances are he's been out there long enough and you've drawn enough cards where you've already pretty much won the game. You should be okay. You know, if we're going to be running this much land, maybe popping in a Molten Vortex would be solid. So maybe we want to consider throwing in one of those, and you know, maybe Shadows of the Past doesn't quite do it for us. But Molten Vortex can win the game on that, so on that own, you know, instead of Shadows of the Past needing to tap 5 to do that. Well, Molten Vortex, we just need an extra land. You know, once we really get 6, 7, 8 land on the field, we don't need to play anymore. At that point, we'll be able to play 2 of anything we want, and then every other land is just a shock at that point. We can kill their creatures, we can deal it directly to their life. You know, it's a pretty solid black and red control deck. So they don't all have to go this way. So let's just start all the way from the start. Take these things out. You know, it's just using the color archetypes as well. Magic is very good that every color tends to have themes, things that it wants to do, things that it's good at. And so that's just some regular black-red archetype themes as far as what they can do in general. But if you're looking at specific combos and like, hey, I really want to play with this combo, I really want to play with that combo, and you look at what's available to you, a lot of people really like to look at cards. They see Bloodflow Connoisseur or Nantuko Husk, and just finding some engines to go along with those, because they see, oh, okay, sacrifice creatures get stronger. You know, if I have a Goblin Piker who's getting blocked and he's not going to kill the creature blocking him, I can just sacrifice him and get more damage through. But then you look at red and you see cards like Active Treason, Enthralling Victor, and some Traitorous Instinct, and you think, wait a second, I could not only take their creature, which then their creature can't block mine, so I get more damage through. I then get to attack them with their creature, and not only after I attack them with their creature, I could go all the way back and then sacrifice it to get my own creatures bigger for it, and then they have nothing. So they spent mana and time and resources of having cards in their deck to play something that didn't get to do its job, and instead hit it in the face, hit themselves in the face. Stop hitting yourself. Stop. And then it just dies anyway after that. So that's a very strong strategy. It's something that the game even tries to tell you to recommend if you go through the deck builder, like, hey, this is a good idea, you should think about this. So it's a very common strat. You know, do you like Nantuko Husk more because it's a +2/+2 bonus and he starts off as a 2/2? Do you like Blood Flow more because it's a permanent bonus even though it is a little bit weaker? That's kind of up to personal preference. I've actually had more success with Blood Flow, which is interesting because I'm pretty sure Nantuko is a little bit stronger and much more popular. So a good way, that's just for the sake of this video, we'll just throw in 3 of each, so that gives us some sacrifice targets. And just for the sake of having 1 additional cost and being fair, we got some gold cards over here. Here's 1 more sacrifice body. He's got, you know, a little bit of a tougher power on him. He's got a little bit of a different effect. Instead of getting bigger, he just straight pings things. So there, that gives us 7 creatures where we want to try and draw 1 or 2 of them during the course of the game, minimum, so that we can go through and proceed through our plan. That should be a good start. After that, we're going to want to play a couple of cards that steal creatures and steal things. So we'll play, you know, a couple of the instincts. We'll play an enthralling victor. We'll play a couple of the active treasons. You know, maybe we want to run cards like Pia, because then it creates 2 additional tokens for us, and we can use those tokens to sacrifice. You know, maybe we'll want to throw 1 of them in there. We'll still probably want Chandra. Maybe we'll want Dragon Fodder because it counts. It creates 2 creatures for us, which gives us a lot of things to sacrifice with. And it also helps benefit us to getting into Spell Mastery if we want to use some Fiery Impulse to remove creatures of their own, which is pretty freaking cool. We can use cards like Fiery Conclusion to sacrifice a creature after we've already stolen their creature and then kill another one. But there's another card that can do this same job. Let's scroll all the way over to it. And here's a good use of the card Bone Splinters. You know, it's just 1 instead of 2, so it's a little bit cheaper. It's only a sorcery, but so are things like Active Treason. We're going to be stealing as a sorcery, so we want to do it at a cheaper cost. We can take their creature, attack them with it, and then just sacrifice it. And the cool thing about Bone Splinters is, in the act of casting it, you have to declare your target, and then part of the cost is sacrificing a creature. If they have 1 creature and you have 0 creatures, you can steal theirs, and you can still kill it with Bone Splinter because you can target that creature to destroy and then sacrifice that creature as part of the cost. You can still kill it regardless of if they don't have any other targets. Like, some spells need targets and it just fizzles otherwise. So Bone Splinters is really good. This gives us lots of ways of sacrificing creatures in this deck. You know, we've got 7 creatures that can do that job for us. We've got, what, 1, 2, 3, 4... We've got 6 cards right now that steal creatures. We probably are going to want a couple more because that's going to be a big theme of the deck. But then we have to make sure we have creatures of our own to sacrifice as well. Because if we're not going to win the game by taking their things, we have to win the game by just killing them ourselves. So let's throw in 1 Shadows of the Past because the card is just that good. Lily is probably worthwhile to run here. What is it that I'm really looking for? Oh, Priest of the Bloodright is perfect in this sort of deck. You get your 5/5 token and then just sacrifice your other guy so that he can be a late game finisher for us. Do we have the Gravediggers still in here? We want to put Gravediggers in here, I think. Gravedigger gives us a body to sacrifice, and it gives us a way to get a body back and then allows us to sacrifice it again. Or if they just straight remove our cards, we have options to you know, recover from that loss. So we've got well, we're missing some 2-drops. We need some additional early game to get up there, but other than that, we've got lots of sacrifice cards, a lot of things to do about it. We just need more ways to steal some creatures. So where are we heavier? We're a little bit heavier on 3, but we can add 1 more, I think, easily. So we can add an Active Treason, and we can add 1 more Traitorous Instinct and 1 more Enthralling Victor. That gives us, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9? 9 ways to steal creatures. You figure in a 60-card deck, let's just pretend it's 10. You know what? Let's just make it 10. So now 1 of every 6 cards is stealing something. And 1 of every, what, 8 cards? We have 7 options here. 1 of every 8 or 9 cards is a creature of us that we can pump with to sacrifice and kill their stuff, in addition to a couple of Bone Splinters. So really we're looking at 1 of every 6 cards we should get something that can sacrifice creatures, and 1 of every 6 cards we should get something to steal their creatures. So it's pretty strong, that's pretty consistent. Our curve is a lot lower. As you saw in the previous deck, we had a couple of 6s, and then we had 7, 7, 7, 7. So there was a lot more on the higher end. This one doesn't have any 6 and only a couple of 5. So 4 is as high as we're going to go with this. We can probably drop out a land at that point. Rogue's Passage, again, will be good to get something through. Foundry of the Councils can get us a couple extra tokens to sacrifice, so we're probably good to keep those things in there. Let's just take out 1 of each just for the sake of being balanced. We'll just drop to 23. Still got the couple Evolving Wilds to thin through a deck and make sure I get a second color of if I need. And then we're still missing, let's see, we got 3 slots left. A couple extra 2-drops would be really beneficial for us. An absolutely obvious choice is Perilous Mirror. It's good to sacrifice, it's good to cast early, it doesn't care what colors of mana we have right here. You know what, I would even say put in the 4th one, we'd rather take out a Fiery Impulse. Maybe even take out a Dragon Fodder for some other stuff. But it allows us, if we want to sacrifice it with Nantuko Husk, suddenly we've got a 4/4 creature, and we get to kill one of their creatures in the process, potentially allowing us to get through a little bit better. So this gives us ways to continually get them back. We can steal their cards, some extra creatures over here. And we're looking at what appears to be a pretty strong deck. There's a lot of synergy with what the cards want to do. There's a lot of removal. There's a little bit of late game with the Priest of the Bloodright. Chandra is in here as well, who can be late game. We do have plenty of red spells to help her get there. So, that's all fine and dandy. Pia's not really going to get there on her own. She's more just because she, is essentially 3 bodies, which is really nice if we want to sacrifice some additional creatures. But, using Miss Nalar over there with Perilous Mirror, you can deal 4 damage to 2 targets, or 4 damage total combined in groups of 2 between 2 targets as you choose, which is very powerful for 3 mana. That's really, really strong. It's essentially another Exquisite Firecraft that you get to split up. It just costs you an artifact. So it's a pretty solid deck at the moment, and this is something where from now on you would just have to play test. Do you need a few more early game options like Goblin Arsonist, which is essentially a Perilous Mirror but not? Do you really like and want to use the Malakar Cullblaze? If we're killing all their creatures and getting a little bit stronger, he's worth getting up there. Do we want some evasion? Do we want to get some flyers out there? Because we can do that too. So do we want to run maybe some Corpse Haulers instead, so we can get some of the graveyard guys back? If we care more about Perilous Mirrors, we can, this essentially could be a way of doubling the Perilous Mirrors. Meanwhile he can still be a chump blocker. He can be Liliana fodder. Any sort of thing like that. So, the Dragon Fodder helps synergize with Chandra. There's lots of different things that go well and work well with this kind of build. As we mentioned, we've got a pretty decent curve. It slowly goes up and then tapers off very sharply, which is strong. So we know that we really want to make sure that we're sitting around that 3/4 mana, on turn 4, very consistently 75 to 90% of the time minimum, which we should be able to do. We have plenty of stuff to do early. So that's a couple different ways to build red-black. That's going over multiple paths to win. As we can get there with stealing their creatures and just hitting them. We can get there by pumping our own guys up. We can get there with Lily or Shadows of the Past by itself, recurring our own creatures. That gives us multiple things to do around theirs. In the other deck that we were looking at, there was some burn with Chandra's Ignition and some bigger creatures. You could consider multiple paths to win, just a single Nightfire Giant perhaps, if you wanted to throw him in there and be like, well, maybe he can get there on his own. You can consider running things like Necromantic Summons in here to get creatures back instead of a Gravedigger. If we're looking, well, that's a lot of 4-drops, I don't really want that. Take out a Gravedigger, go with a Necromantic Summons if you want. It gives us 1/5, so the curve doesn't really change much. But this way, if we kill something big and fat, we can then steal a nice big and fat creature, which can be its own win condition as well. So lots of different ways to go about it. Oh, I can't believe I forgot. Another perfect card to use in this type of deck would be Flame Shadow Conjuring, of course. every time you play a creature, you get to make an additional copy of it, which is just more things to sacrifice after they've attacked. So, you know, we could potentially get rid of... what do we want to get rid of? What would make a little bit of sense? Let's get rid of the Shadows of the Past. I don't know why. Let's get rid of one more Fiery Impulse. You know, we might be better off using Goblin Arsonist instead of the Impulses anyway, but this way now we're still sitting with plenty of options. You know, if I'm playing this with an Enthralling Victor, suddenly I just stole a couple of his creatures, and I'm attacking multiple times. You know, if you put out an extra Pia, yeah, the Pias would kill, or one of them would die, but you get an extra 2 Thopter tokens, and Flyers can get there on their own. You know, Rogue Door is a win condition on its own with any creature. So it's got multiple paths of victory. We've got a good mana base. You know, it's nice and mixed up. We've got, you know, Lily as a double cost in black early. You know, Chandra cancels that, so they're both pretty equal, 3 and 3. And then we don't really get into any double cost outside of that. We got some couple in black at 5, and one in black at, or one in red at 4. But those are, you know, not very high. There's only one of them there and 2 of those there, so we're pretty good with equal amounts of land. We got 15 and 19, so you know, our curve is strong. Our mana base is pretty strong. You know, we've got a lot of good synergy going on. You know, we're lots of plans, so it's a solid way to look at a deck. We've got, you know, depending on how you want to operate with these, maybe switch these guys around. You know, how well do you do against aggro? That's always something you want to think about. Perilous Mirror is good against aggro. Dragon Fodder can help stall some aggro. Fiery Impulse obviously beats aggro a little bit. So we're a little bit slower. If people play a lot of 1, 2, and 3 drops, we might take some damage early, but we'll just start stealing their creatures and hitting them with it, and leaving our guys back to block, getting them back with Gravediggers. You know, we can just ping all of their stuff dead with all of our removal. We can get additional creatures on our side as well. So there's lots of things that we can do. One of the really cool things is this doesn't really have main cards. You know, I guess you could look at these two being your main cards, but your decks want to be able to win without drawing your most important cards. Willbreaker Syndrome, for that matter. If you make a Willbreaker deck and you don't draw Willbreaker, you have to be able to win without it. So, like we determined earlier, there's 10 ways to steal and 10 things to sacrifice with. You know, if we don't get one of the sacrifice cards, but we get, you know, Pia out there by herself, or Blazing Hellhound out there pretty quick, with, you know, some Perilous Mirror backup to stem the tide for a little bit, and that's all we get, and then we just get a bunch of steal cards because we didn't get any of the sacrifice, you know, and Rogue Door, we'll get there, you know, that's fine. So, lots of things to do, lots of things to look at. Thank you for watching, everybody. You know, please, you know, leave every question you have in the comments. If there's something I did wrong, if there's something you want to mention, if there's a question you want to ask about, you know, differences between specific cards. Why did you run card A instead of card B? You know, I'm not advocating that these are, you know, you must run this. This is the best kind of deck. You know, I wanted to kind of give more of an introduction as here's things to think about when making a Magic deck. And this was just the color that you guys chose. So, you know, please ask me any questions. I'll respond to all the comments that have something to respond to that haven't been answered already. If you guys want me to do more of these with different colors, I could certainly trim down the amount of time it takes. I wouldn't need to explain mana bases again, but I could look at a couple different colors as well, potentially. So anything you guys have that you want to say, anything you guys want to piece in, you know, feel free to please leave that in the comments. Any questions you have, feel free to, you know, ask those too. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions you guys have. If there's places that you guys know that you know, get a lot of your deck lists from, things and that, you can, you know, show me one of those, like, hey, this is this list. What do you think about these cards that he uses versus those cards that I use or this guy uses, you know, stuff like that. And as always, you know, hopefully you'll stick around in the videos where we play with our decks, or you come along to the Twitch streams and you can, you know, interact live, you know, watch the games being played and see the questions and seeing the cards and play testing, see them live. You know, these decks are designed to always be changing. You know, meta games are always changing. You want to always be on the up and up. If there's, you know, a hole in the deck, you know, maybe you want to fill it with swapping a couple of cards, you know, maybe it's really good. You know, maybe, I don't know, maybe, you know, whatever. Maybe Fiery Impulse just doesn't work for you and you want a couple extra creatures. You know, you can look at putting in some Goblin Arsonists, as they count as a creature and they have an additional or additional ability when they sacrifice and die. You know, maybe that works for you. So all sorts of fun things to think about. Thank you everybody for watching. Please give me your feedback. Hopefully you enjoyed, and hopefully I'll see you guys all soon. So take it easy, everybody. Don't forget, hopefully I'm going to remember to put a couple links in the description as well. That mathematical chart for mana curve, the straw poll link, other things like that. So let me know what you guys think, and I can't wait to catch you guys soon. So take it easy, everybody. Catch you later. Peace, guys.